Someone inside our base is feeding a contractor live targeting data. Tonight, we set a trap, and the quietest person here will spring it. What do you do when the enemy wears your badge? Before we continue, if you're into stories like this, take a second to like and subscribe. The algorithm might skip you, and you won't want to miss where this goes. They called Anna Kincaid the gun's janitor. They were wrong. She kept her head down because it kept other people's heads up. On most mornings, she measured time by the sound of metal cooling and the small, decisive click of a safety returning home. She used cloth and patience the way some people used rank. If you watched long enough, you noticed a ritual. 3 points on the targeting panel, touched in the same order every time. Like knocking on a door only she could hear from the inside. Lieutenant Drew Hollis noticed. He didn't say anything the first time. He watched her hands and the way the machine seemed to answer them. The second time, he noticed something else. A patch, tucked beneath the strap of her tool roll, faded to ash-gray threads and a hint of gold. Certain shapes don't exist on the books, but pilots still learn them the way sailors learn constellations. He stopped mid-step. He didn't ask. Neither did she. Respect sometimes arrives without a sound. Sergeant Mira Dalton once joked that Kincaid loved the aircraft more than it loved her. Then she watched a minor fault clear after Kincaid's fingertips briefed the panel, and she didn't make that joke again. The base had a story for Kincaid. Quiet, odd, a little too precise about things no one else checked twice. Stories like that keep people predictable. But the day a camera went dark for 3 minutes while a contractor hustled a crate through a side door, predictability felt like a costume that didn't fit. Paper records smiled. The digital ones looked too perfect. The seal on a recent maintenance log gleamed like a mirror. Beautiful is a warning label when it comes to seals. Major Colby Hart called Kincaid into a converted storage room and slid a thin folder across the table. Administrative closure. Operation Night Lattice. Valor citation. No ceremony, no photographs. Some honors grow best behind locked doors. He opened a laptop. Timestamps, a map that avoided drama. Your bird's log is being pinged through a civilian relay, he said. Not a dump. Touches, repeated. He zoomed on a checksum that shone like chrome. A seal that's too perfect is not a seal. It's a stamp for show. Where does the pipe lead? Kincaid asked. Outer depots, mixed shipments. The contractor you already know by rumor. He paused on the name he chose not to say aloud. Someone inside is helping. Someone who knows how to make a stamp look like a seal. A legal officer stepped into the doorway, took in the open file, and let a quiet verdict land between them. Acknowledged. Nothing more. Enough for the room to feel smaller and more certain. Kincaid steadied the folder with one hand, as if the text might slide. You called me because of the patch. I called you because the machine listens to you, Hart said. The patch told me you'd understand what it's saying. It wasn't mine, she said. It belonged to someone who didn't get a grave. I keep it to remember a door I promised to close. Hollis stood in the doorway he shouldn't be in, Dalton beside him. We'll stand where she tells us, he said, and meant it. Give me a sealed pre-flight, Kincaid said. Cleaner than clean. We bait the thief with a kitchen shinier than theirs and wait for the one fingerprint you can't fake. The mistake. If the machine speaks to you, Hart answered, ride with it when it speaks the loudest. He slid a badge across. Quiet authorization, no speeches, no salutes. No headlines, Kincaid said. She breathed in, slow and measured, like lifting a heavy box and setting it down without a thud. FOB Granite woke the way it always did. Mess hall steam, forklifts drawing chalk routes, taxi lights giving up on the night. Orders moved. People moved. The underground data run hummed as if nothing were wrong. At the supply cage, a rookie watched Kincaid request parts in an order that made no straight-line sense. Washer before fastener, harness before bracket. Polite chaos that left no audit trail. He wrote her name in a cheap notebook and didn't know why. Contractors in new vests drifted through older dust. A dead camera slot matched a crate's passage. Hart gathered the core team without calling it a briefing. "The suite is our house," he said. "Someone has a key and wipes their shoes too clean. Tonight, we invite them over." The plan was tight. Fly with a manual fix Kincaid had built, a small patch between the suite and its memory. That fix would restore the label that decides friend from foe when the sky gets noisy, and split a copy of the raw truth to a second module she would carry home by hand. "No uploads," Hart said. "No arguments later." "Call sign?" Hollis asked. "Nomad 1, Hart said. "Because we don't belong to whoever thinks they can claim us." Dalton kept it simple. "We'll fly clean. Keep the sky honest. You keep the pipe open." Kincaid nodded. "If they've been bending labels under noise, my fix pins the label down. We won't brag. We'll keep the receipt." Preparation loves silence. Before the ramp lights went hard, Kincaid walked the aircraft again, fingertips remembering screws and seams by feel. She checked her pencil mark on the faceplate. Still there. The pretty seal below it made her trust it even less. She slid the manual patch in, seated it like a quiet truth in a loud room, and locked the plate. Somewhere between the first time she touched this panel and this moment, a life had been exchanged for the rest of them. No headline, no folded flag. A promise, though, stitched into a patch and kept near a heartbeat. Night arrived without asking permission. Hart signed the authorization that prefers not to exist and handed Kincaid a headset as if passing a match in wind. "You hear anything the rest of us don't," he said. "Say it." "I'll fly the plan, not the fear," Hollis said, buckling in. "I'll keep our ghosts friendly," Dalton answered, flipping her checks. "I'll keep the receipt," Kincaid said, palms steady on the panel. 3 touches, the ritual that tells her to be here. The base shrank to a constellation of sodium lamps. In the comms room, 2 alarms bloomed at once, the firewall's polite chime turning sharp as a perimeter siren began its climb. On a monitor, a square around a square pulsed. The firewall opened like a hinge that trusted the wrong hand, while a hostile UAS vectored from the outer yard, moving like it had flown this road before. Hart's voice flattened on the radio. "Nomad 1, windows open. Insider just signed in with a borrowed pen. UAS inbound. If we close now, we lose the trail and risk a blind swipe." A second controller cut in, tight with concern. "Heads up. Convoy Bravo will cross Sector 3 in 9 minutes. Keep labels clean." Dalton cut to the practical. "Filters on my mark. Give me the raw, lose the glitter." "Copy," Kincaid said. "Kill the pretty graph. Show me numbers. Window width to narrow. Rate gate conservative." Hollis breathed once, long. "Holding 3. Tower came back with a new thread of caution. Convoy Bravo now H+5. They're in the turnpike. Keep friend labels sticky." The headset crowded but didn't clutter. Hart on one net. Bay 12 door is moving. A ground controller on another. Eyes inside, 1 badge, 1 shadow. Dalton's tone stayed even. "Hostile UAS is painting wide, no lock yet." "Let it look," Kincaid said. "If it thinks pretty, we win ugly." She pressed the manual fix deeper into the loop and watched the counterfeit begin its trick. laying a polished smile over a working mouth. "There you are." Noise climbed. The label wavered the way truth does when the room is shouting. "Hold steady," she said. "Strip the shimmer." Hollis flattened the turn by a degree that didn't show up on cameras and made all the difference to physics. "Convoy Bravo to tower, turning on the markers," a calm voice reported. They were a world away and close enough to touch. The UAS tightened again, bringing the seeker to a place where impatience often ruins plans. Dalton's hands answered with countermeasures and an angle that presented the least to the most. "Brake left 3, she said. Hollis gave her 2.5 because 2.5 was cleaner. The label tried to slide. Kincaid pinned it with work instead of force. "Under noise, a friend can vanish behind the wrong word," she said quietly, to herself as much as to them. "Not tonight." "Copy not tonight," Dalton said, the closest she would get to a grin over the radio. "Convoy crossing now," the controller called. A heartbeat passed. Another. The stamp faltered, met a surface that didn't care to be fooled, and came apart around the edges. Numbers replaced the mirage. The friend stayed friend. The not friend stayed not. Kincaid watched the argument write itself into the black box. "Receipts printing," she said. "Tower to Convoy Bravo, clear of Sector 3, came the line they had been flying toward. A notch of air left the cabin. Nobody cheered. They just flew better. "Copy," Hollis said to Hart. "We'll stitch the chain upstairs." Dalton strapped in, eyes on countermeasures. "Not a clean choice." "It's the right one," Kincaid said. "Then let's make it once," Hollis answered, and the aircraft began to move as if the ground had let it go. Air changes language as soon as you leave it. The rhythm of work returned. Dalton called bearing, altitude, traffic, the words that keep people honest. Hollis kept the turns soft. Kincaid watched the indicators. The seals gleamed green, too green. She waited for the moment Beauty asked to be believed. "Pipe just coughed," Hart said. "Contractor account, Bay 12. Same time as the UAS vector. We're on both ends of the rope." "Copy," Dalton said. Countermeasures hot. In the headset's cushion of sound, Kincaid's breathing slowed. A cadence she hadn't heard in years threaded through the channel. Not a sound so much as an alignment. The manual patch tilted a degree. A sublog that had been locked since the day it was born recognized the key now sitting in its path. A small icon filled in. Kincaid's thumb hovered, then committed. On the display, a ribbon of time unspooled from night lattice. Not the public diary, the one training can recite, but a held breath between encirclement and decision. A last resort scuttle to keep what must not be captured from being captured, to keep who must not be forced from being forced. The machine understood even if it could not grieve. "Hold steady," Kincaid said, and Hollis made his steadiness larger, enough for 3 people to stand on. The log ran in seconds and weighed years. "Nomad 1, status?" Hart asked. "Unlock occurred," Kincaid said. "Sublog recovered from night lattice. That's all for this net." Her next breath wasn't ragged. It was the lift of someone taking the other side of a table so the person across doesn't have to do it alone. "Ground copies," Hart said. "Insider in custody. Pipe still live. Convoy clear of Sector 3. Keep it so until you can carry the proof." "Receipt is printing," Kincaid answered, and Dalton flew a hair cleaner for it. "Nomad 1, you're clear to return on profile," Tower added, relief hiding in plain language. Somewhere else, paperwork had already begun moving toward rooms where plain words wear suits. "Copy," Hollis said, We'll bring it home." Dalton glanced back once, because you always do when someone is carrying the thing you can't afford to drop. "Your fix is doing its job," she said, meaning the patch, the promise, both. "It will keep doing it until we set it down," Kincaid answered. "Then it's just a record, a good one." For 6 breaths, nobody spoke. The engines spoke instead, a low, devoted sound. Quiet is a tool when you let it be. The air calms the farther they get from the lights, as if distance itself were a kind of mercy. Hollis kept the turns unshowy. Dalton rode ahead of the aircraft by a breath, making space where there wasn't any a second ago. Kincaid watched the seals hold, the numbers stack, the diary write, steady as rain on a tin roof. They were not here to make history. They were here to keep it honest. Hollis lined up the approach like he was writing with a pen borrowed from someone who would notice if he ruined the tip. Dalton called the glide and the crosswind and the little clover leaf of lights that means you get to live another day if you make one more good choice. Kincaid kept her hand near the faceplate but didn't touch it yet. The aircraft loved to pretend it was separate from the ground. The ground loved to pretend it couldn't feel the aircraft. They both knew better. Touchdown was honest. No flourish. Brakes spoke once, brief, and swallowed their words. They taxied long enough for nerves to become routine again. The hangar's old hush returned, shy of the news it could shout if anyone made it. Kincaid unclipped, knelt by the panel, and turned each fastener with the same pressure as always. The room around the table felt like a courtroom without pews. The legal officer returned, the same one whose one-word verdict had started the night tilting the right way. She checked the photos, matched serials to tags, and set her initials in a neat corner. "Acknowledged and logged," she said, and the sentence put weight under the pouch. Hart opened a fresh form and began the slow handwriting reserved for things that must outlast fashion. Hollis watched the line labeled Technical Verification, Wait for Ink, and said, "Make that 2 names." He nodded toward Kincaid. "Co-author." The legal officer didn't blink. Addendum permitted. Hart slid the form across. Kincaid signed, block letters steady. Dalton leaned in just enough to read the line and tapped the margin once with her knuckle, a small applause that didn't need hands. The rookie hovered at the edge until Hart beckoned him closer. "Witness," Hart said. The kid's signature was tidy in the way of people who've recently decided they like being exact. Kincaid set the pen down and glanced at the photos. "Include an annex," she said. 1 page. Diagram of how the forged seal tries to reapply under noise, and how the fix forces it to declare itself. "Do it," Hart said. He wasn't a man given to compliments. He preferred permissions that built better rooms. Hollis closed his copy of the flight notes and looked over. "For the record, we flew the plan." She kept it true. No one argued. There was nothing to argue with. The legal officer added the annex tab and wrote the time across it with a line as straight as a runway. "Complete," she said. "Chain intact." She placed the faceplate and fasteners in her crooked little row, the metronome of a craftsperson. The black box looked like it always looks. That is the point. She reached for the second module, the one that kept the argument, and freed it. Small enough to pocket, heavy enough to change a room's temperature, into a pouch. Seal the pouch. Note the time. Sign where a signature turns care into evidence. She stood with the balanced sway of someone carrying water. Hart met them halfway without theater. He looked at the pouch, not their faces. "Original evidence," he said. The way some people say amen. He didn't take it yet. He walked them to a table where a camera stared without blinking, and a sheet of white paper weighted like a truce flag. Set it there. Click. Watch beside it. Ink beside that. Rituals make belief easier to hold. Dalton found herself near the insider and asked the only question that matters, and the only one that never fixes anything. Why? He looked at the floor, because floors forgive. Debt, he said. And I thought it wouldn't change the air. A bad sentence for a familiar mistake. Hart said nothing. Accuracy, not pity. In the quiet between steps, the unlocked sublog from Night Lattice settled in Kincaid's chest. She didn't decorate it. She didn't shrink from it. There was rain. There was a perimeter that closed like math. There was a choice. Keep what must not be captured from being captured. No gore, no trumpet. Just hard arithmetic done correctly. The Valor citation is not less real because it kept its voice down. Some honors live behind locked doors and never touch a podium. Hart cleared his throat to mark a boundary in the day. We'll do the rest by the book, he said, and let the book grow a page where it needs to. Eat. Sleep. Tomorrow we point the right lights at the right places. Tomorrow? Hollis echoed, like a promise he could keep. Tonight, Kincaid said. One thing left. She didn't mean the safe. She meant the case. They walked a corridor made for in-between moments. Photos of people with known names. Plaques for units where no single person can carry the credit or the blame. In the middle, a modest glass box of patches without labels. It exists because the base insists on remembering what it can't put on a flyer. The light above it is never harsh. She lifted the lid. Hinges purred. She didn't put evidence inside. That belongs to chain of custody and rooms where truth changes paper. What she set down was the patch that wasn't hers. Threadbare edge like old smoke. Simple design that pretended to say nothing. She laid it among the others as if touching a shoulder to say, we made it this far. She let it rest where it fell and called that right. What do you want on the card? Hart asked, because a card is allowed. A line, not a paragraph. We kept our word, she said. That's enough. The base found its volume again. People moved around the story without knowing they were walking past it. A broom lifted dust no one would miss. A kettle boiled. On the line, a mechanic laughed at a joke that's only funny once. In the hangar, under the same nose that watched the night begin, Kincaid took a clean cloth and knelt where she always knelt. She answered the machine. The panel seated with a soft promise. The safety clicked home with the tiny, absolute sound that divides a room. Hollis drifted close enough to be heard without pushing his voice against walls. If you ever want about Night Lattice, thank you, Kincaid said, the yes that means not today. He understood and studied a bolt as if it had the decency to be complicated. Dalton set a pen on the nearest clipboard and wrote 3 words that weren't a report. Keep the receipt. She drew a small square, 2 sides taller than the other 2, and smiled for reasons she didn't explain. Morning brought the scrape of chairs, the cough of engines, paper records pretending they didn't know what happened last night. The digital ones told the truth in a language courts respect, and the rest of us can trust. The rookie brought his cheap notebook to Hart. Inside, sequences that felt wrong before he knew why. Good ink, Kincaid told him. Keep noticing sequence. He pointed, awkward, proud, toward Bay 12. I thought that door was colder. Doors can be, she said. You were right to feel it. Contractor reps arrived with careful suits and softer voices. They talked values and oversight and the future. Hart let the tablecloth lay itself out, then placed on it the uplink, the timestamps, the counterfeit seal, the pipe reroute, the pouch with signatures straight enough to cut yourself on. Smiles came off like sunglasses at dusk. Reviews were promised. They weren't wrong to promise. They were too late to impress. Kincaid replaced a harness with life left in it, because almost failures teach faster than failures do. A crew chief from another bay appeared, and for the first time, asked, not told, if she'd look at a jittery signal. They fixed it together. He said thank you like the word was new. Quiet moment. On a metal step that rings like a bell when a mug touches it, Kincaid showed the rookie her 3 touches in the air where no panel waits. Index, ring, thumb. So soft, the steel didn't complain. "It's not magic," she said. "It's me telling me, bay here." He mirrored the motion. Somewhere in him, a door that wasn't quite shut clicked. An inspection team arrived on a Wednesday and left on the same Wednesday, which is how you know they found what mattered. They didn't ask about night lattice. They didn't ask about patches. They asked for forms and times, and they saw them. A captain with neat hair paused over a new card. For those who stood where there was no good choice and chose well. He pretended to read the font size. He read the sentence instead. The culture shifted by a degree small enough to miss if you measured in inches. Measure in tone and you can hear it. A comms tech refused seals that shone like chrome. He scuffed one on purpose, then laughed and scuffed again. Another bay started using the same cloth Kincaid favored. Respect became a verb before it became a feeling. Hart drafted a short reply to a faraway office that wanted a panel and a case study and a slide deck. He wrote, "We have our procedures. Thank you." He didn't CC anyone. He didn't need an audience to be firm. That night a storm tumbled in and left the earth brighter than it found it. Puddles held rectangles of sky. The patch in the case looked newer in the strange light, as if being among other quiet things had warmed it. As Kincaid passed, the rookie adjusted a card by a finger's width so it sat square. He thought no one saw. She did. "Up at 1900, Hollis said, showing weather that had learned some manners. "If it holds." "Weather always permits," she said. "Eventually." "If there's ever a day you want the front seat," he offered, "I'll move my elbows." "I like it here," she answered. And it wasn't deflection. It was geography. He nodded. Accepting geography is part of growing up. 1900 arrived. The mission was ordinary by design and costly by possible. They flew it like the rest, attentively, without theater, respecting gravity's stubbornness and lift's generosity. Labels behaved under noise that barely existed. Seals looked like seals, not stamped smiles. The diary wrote its dull, lovely entries. They landed so smoothly the ground seemed surprised to have them back. The days that followed were quieter in the way a room gets quiet when the argument's been settled and the work begins. Hart asked for statements in clean lines. What was touched, when, what the machine said back. Kincaid gave him sentences that could hold up a roof. When a line invited opinion, she answered with process. When a form asked role, she wrote, "Crew chief." Plain is stronger than dramatic here. The insider signed where he was told to. Sitting takes an inch off anyone. There's a moment when a person realizes the story they wrote about necessity and cleverness was just that, a story. It shows in the face like a light switching off in a room that still has furniture. Kincaid didn't look long. Pity isn't the tool this job needs. Accuracy is. Hollis walked her to the door after the last page. "You kept us honest," he said, "not as praise but as a measurement. like range, like bearing. "I have a seat," she answered, tapping the panel with 2 knuckles, a table where a friend is always waiting. He understood. Respect arrives, then makes itself useful. The visitors from higher headquarters arrived in quiet shoes and careful expressions a week later. They stood at the edge of the hangar and did their best not to be in the way. Kincaid showed them nothing dramatic. She showed them checklists that don't apologize for being long. She showed them a scuffed seal and why the scuff matters more than the shine. She showed them the split memory, diary, and argument, and the little pouch that carried home a truth. One of them asked where the medals are. "Some honors live behind locked doors," she said, "and do their work just fine from there." Hollis and Dalton briefed a routine hop, and the visitors watched a team speak in shorthand that still contained every syllable it needed. Hart narrated only when necessary. Mostly he let the room explain itself. It did. That evening, Hollis found Kincaid at the panel. "What happens to the patch when we're gone?" he asked, not morbid, curious. "It stays," she said. "That's what patches do. The people move. The promises stay in one place so we can find them again." "Do you ever wish?" he began, and stopped. "Sometimes," she said. "Then I remember what the work asked for." He nodded, which is another way of saying I hear you. Dalton appeared with a small grin that suggested she knew when to arrive. 1900's a gift tonight," she said. "Let's take it." They did. The sky behaved. The labels held. The diary wrote its quiet lines. They landed with the same honest touch that had become their signature. No flourish, just right. Later, alone, Kincaid walked the long way back through the corridor that holds the case. She didn't intend to stop, and then she did, because there was a new patch among the old. The card beneath it read, in a hand she recognized as Hart's. For those who stood where there was no good choice and chose well. She thought of a field that grew back. She thought of rain on corrugated metal and a laugh swallowed by a storm. She set 2 fingers lightly to the glass, not a prayer, an acknowledgement. Outside, the night was doing what nights do, making room for repairs no one will notice if they're done right. In the hangar, she knelt where machines and people meet. Cloth, patience, 3 touches. She closed the panel and waited for the quiet punctuation she loves best. The latch found itself. The click was tiny and absolute. It divided the room. Some endings don't make headlines. They keep people alive. She didn't ask for a flag. She kept a promise. If stories like this resonate, tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next promise kept.